we have our first ever special episode. Most of our shows are Dr. Elouise and I debating and chatting about different topics. We have had so many people request and had comments and things come in asking us about different data topics. And so we decided that our good friend Susan Walsh was the perfect person to come on as an unbiased third party. Also love that she is very open and honest and very candid about her thoughts and perspectives around data. So we decided that we wanted to ask her to come on today to talk about a few different topics. And we're going to carry on like normal, like we're three friends chatting. We're just going to be chatting about data today. So Susan, you did a post, I want to say a couple weeks ago now, around taxonomy as it relates to data and ERP. So I'm going to open that up as our opener today, and I'll have maybe Dr. Elouise kick us off and dive into this topic a little bit.
Susan, thank you for joining us. You know I'm a huge fan of yours.
The pleasure is all mine. Being with you two, this is magical.
And I hope you have as much fun as we do, because we have a ton of fun on that.
Oh, I know. I will. Absolutely.
All right. So taxonomy. So in brief, after reading your post, certainly relying on the ERP or UNSPSC as the way of, as the organizing construct. So the question is all right, fine, I agree. What do we do?
I'm seeing a move towards more customized taxonomies that procurement are using out with the system, and then they might be mapping that to whatever taxonomy is in their ERP, because they can't get what they need from the taxonomy that exists in the ERP. It's great for finance. They're quite happy. In fact, I literally had a conversation yesterday with a local council here in the UK. Finance are using the UNSPSC. I literally was like, please don't use the UNSPSC. I even have a document that I now send out to people on, the benefits of the UNSPSC versus something customized, because you just can't get the visibility on your spend that you really need. It's particularly in specific areas such as marketing, your favorite, Sarah. There's very few options, and it doesn't even really take account for things like social media, and even things like marketing in the UNSPSC sits under two separate categories at level 1, whereas you want to see all your marketing under one. So it's causing more work for people, and then at that point they just don't bother. Why should we keep our data up to date if it's not even fit for purpose?
Okay. All right. So I've seen thousands of taxonomies, and every company we've worked with that thinks they're a special flower and that they have to have their own taxonomy.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we, where do we start? If let's just say I'm going to throw everything out. I'm going to start clean, blank slate, clean sheet, whatever the right term is. Where do I start?
We start by starting to classify the data and build the taxonomy as we go through the data. One of my kind of rules is no more than 10 to 15 level 1s. So that's going to be things like IT, travel, professional services, HR, you might have MRO, depending on what industry you're in, or logistics might be a category in its own right, but sometimes it sits under facilities. And that's why it's so important to kind of have a taxonomy that fits your business, because the same thing, the same supplier can be a different categorization in different companies.
So, okay. So then why can we not agree at least on a broad stroke? Because IT makes sense, MRO, logistics. Why can't we not have just a basic taxonomy, like a rough taxonomy? Why are we in this place where it is, I think it's an unmitigated disaster. And I know the disaster is probably too, like ERPs are a disaster. So I know I'm overblowing the term here, but why is this such a mess?
Well, and I want to also throw in, the difference between indirect and direct. So I'd
So,
like to also throw that
yeah.
into the mix, because I have spent the last 3 years on the direct side. And I would argue a lot of the things that are done on the data side are more focused on the indirect side, because that's often a bigger spend. But direct is very different.
I've found in my experience that they have more of a grip of what's going on the direct side. And so it's the indirect that's just unmanaged and wild and the Wild West. But again, different clients. Some clients have actually started removing the difference between direct and indirect, and they just want one taxonomy for everything. Others have like a level 0 to split between direct, indirect, and unaddressable or non-addressable, or something to that effect. You can't. I don't think you can have a one size fits all taxonomy. The best I think you can do is have a taxonomy per industry. And I can tell you, like, market research. So your companies like Kantar and Nielsen, they have data as a category because they're buying it from other sources, whereas you wouldn't see that in very few other businesses. If you're working in manufacturing, you need a lot of MRO and you need massive detail on the different types of. It's not good enough to say it's a nut or a bolt. You need the different types of nuts and bolts that you're buying. Whereas if you're an office-based company, you're only buying nuts and bolts to fix a few things. You don't need to know that detail. So I think maybe having something by industry is the best way to go.
So who's going to own doing that, Susan? I'm
going to take over the world and do it all.
I liken that. So in my world, in marketing, there's something called the Pantone matching system.
Yes, Pantone.
So it's called PMS. And many years ago, and I should actually look up, I don't know, somebody had the intuition to say it is the complete wild, wild west for designers when it comes to colors. This blue doesn't look like this blue, but it has the same name. So I kind of liken it to Dr. Elouise's question. So somebody built a system and said, we have numbers and every number equates to a color. So no matter where in the world you are, no matter who you work for, if you're in marketing and you need a blue, you get the number and everyone is using that same blue. So who's going to do that for taxonomy?
Well, at the moment, you've got the UNSPSC, which I think is now owned by GS1. But I think, actually, you know what? I could just build it and put it out there, but it's up to people to use it and to know how to find it. I think it needs to come from actual people who are hands-on using taxonomies and working with them day in, day out, and not just a large organization that is trying to cover everything off. And actually there's another taxonomy that GS1 have as well, and that is very similar to the UNSPSC, and that is equally as awful. And I think the most important thing we need to do is make it simple wording, chart and analytics friendly. So let's not have information technology and broadcasting services. Could we just have IT, make it simple? That would be nice. So those things. But yeah, I guess putting them out there and getting people to use it and driving change from grassroots, I guess.
I'm desperately wanting to bring up AI here, and I know our next topic, maybe this can be a bridge to our next topic, because I know it, like the taxonomy, AI touches taxonomy, and I know we want to talk about spend analytics, and so maybe I'll bridge the two, but I got to just ask the question, because why couldn't we just use AI to to build the taxonomy? And in my explorations on my YouTube series, I started looking in preparation for this podcast. There are actual taxonomy builders in OpenAI. So why wouldn't we just go with something like that and train the AI to create the classification?
So is it learning from the spent data to build the taxonomy? Because that's the most important thing. You have to have a taxonomy that fits your data. If it's just building something from what's out there in the wider world, then you're going to have the same problems as the UNSPSC and all the other off-the-shelf taxonomies.
So I haven't done it, so I've added it to my list
Yeah.
of future episodes to create. But
Yeah.
I think the question is, and this is where it gets back to spend data, is okay, I take a bunch of transactions, so my data, and my recent video, I did credit card transactions, and
Mhm.
it classified some of the data as travel.
Yeah.
And it knew that United and Delta were airline travel, but it didn't know that JSX, which is a smaller carrier here, was airline travel. And so I told it that JSX was airline travel. But it deduced, I mean, it did figure out that some of those are airline travel, and I didn't have to do anything there. So ostensibly, it could, or I could just tell it if I have airline travel and I have hotels and I have whatever, then I could tell it that the broader category is travel. Couldn't it build out or manage the taxonomy organically?
I mean, maybe we're kind of like doing that with master lists already. It's, I mean, I think about a year or so ago, we tried to take products. So things that you would like might have a product code that you could find. And we asked the ChatGPT to classify it with the UNSPSC, and it hallucinated. So we got commodity of one bit of the UNSPSC, another bit of the UNSPSC in this column, and so in class, and so it made up a whole new level of UNSPSC. So I think it's great that we're trying these things out. I think the main thing is whoever's doing it has to know what bad data looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying in my head, I'm trying to figure out how it would do that, but I can't. I mean, it could figure out what groups of items were from suppliers and then build a taxonomy based on that. I guess
Right.
you're always going to need that little last mile is always going to be people, I would say.
Right. And my question really is coming from this idea that people are lazy and like they don't want to start because all these, like they look at the UNSPSC and the disaster that is, and they're like, they throw their hands up. But I guess maybe what I'm asking is, or try to be more precise, is okay, if you could just toss the thing into OpenAI and let it come back with something, a starting point, and allowed you to scaffold up to do that last mile.
Yeah,
I'm not
something's
saying,
better
by
than
the way, I'm
nothing.
not advocating this. I'm just, this
No,
is the
no.
question that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, and I think the biggest hurdle to any of that would be time and resources to do that. That's the biggest problem. And I think there is also a part that is, well, everyone else is using the UNSPSC, so we should too.
Well, yeah. Well, with all the hype around AI or Gen AI, everybody's going to be saying, well, everybody's doing Gen AI, so we might as well jump on
It's
board.
happening.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good pivot, Sarah, into our next topic of spend analytics. Because
Sorry, Sarah, you've not had a word in edgeways.
So I did a post, gosh, maybe 3 weeks ago now, around my becoming frustrated with AI speak in almost every website and all the marketing I'm reading from procure tech companies. We're AI backed, we're AI enabled, we're AI charged. I randomly went through Dr. Elouise's spider map and I picked out, I forget what the number was. I think it was like 14 companies. And I went and looked at all of their websites. Only 2 of the companies did not have AI plastered all over their homepage. And that was just a small sampling, but it's something that's becoming kind of annoying and really irritating because I don't care so much about the AI. I care what problem you're solving.
Yeah.
So tell me how the AI is going to solve the problem that I have. Don't just tell me you're using AI.
The truth is, they don't know. And since I set this business up 7 years ago, we've proudly spoken about the fact that we're non-AI, we're people-based. And the reason is, in my previous life, I was the AI. My team and I, we were the AI. So I know what goes on behind the scenes. And I'd like to say that it's moved on a lot since then, but you just need to look at how many offices are offshored and how many jobs for data, this, that, and the next thing. And that tells you that only a percentage of what is claiming to be done by AI is actually being done by it. So my challenge would be to you, yes, say that you're using AI, but challenge those suppliers and say, well, what percentage of your work is AI? Because I bet you they won't tell you that. They're just assuming that you think it's 100%.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the other ways to kind of get around the whole, is this real AI or not, is ask them to do a real life example. So
they'll always do demo data with a demo data set
yes,
that's been run a
here's
million
some
times.
data I have right now. Can you please plug this into your platform? I'd like to see it work in action.
Yeah.
And if you really are, I'm generalizing here, but if you really are using AI, a lot of the functionality that the platforms have should be able to show something in real time and generate some sort of output.
Well, the other thing is, if it really is that efficient and effective, why are you not getting your projects turned around in days or weeks? Why is it taking months or years to do implementations of things? I think that tells you everything, and I'm not trying to be anti-AI, because I do believe that it use it wisely and smartly, make yourself more efficient, let it do the jobs that are really repetitive and manual, but don't blindly rely on it.
Yeah, and I'd amplify your point there, Susan. If I'm using AI, I should be able to do this in a day, in hours, because I mean that's part of what I'm proving is I can just take some data and toss it into OpenAI, and if I, as a complete novice or a dilettante even, and I can just toss some data in and get some results. I mean, imagine somebody that actually knew what they were doing. Like the power is there. But
Can
so
I give you? Sorry,
what's that? No, go ahead.
I was going to give you a little spoiler teaser, because I am very much a woman of my word. And I mean, Elouise, I think I spoke to you about this 2 years ago. We have been building a tool in the background here. It'll be a supplier normalization tool. It's almost ready to test. And it will literally be, you will have a normalized file back within minutes. This is going to save days, if not weeks, of people's time. And we stand by it, and we're honest, and we say, guess what? It's not going to be perfect when you get it back, but we'll have real people in the background working on the data to clean it. So if you come back in a month, it'll be even better. And so, really stand by the fact that, and that's not even AI. That's just some smarts and some coding. We're not even claiming to be an AI tool, but we're just trying to be honest. And I think that's missing from a lot of marketing. Sarah, they need you.
Well, I think marketers need to remember that it's really important to establish trust, and honesty goes a long way. So if you're very open and saying our product is not great at these things, but we're really good at this, or we are brand new and we're figuring it out, I'm actually, as a prospect or a potential customer, going to be more likely to actually believe what you say if I think your messaging and what you're talking about is actually honest. Susan, so my question for you, the reason why I wanted to talk about this today was, in particular, spend analytic platforms that are claiming everything is done with AI, right? We're AI this, we're AI that. And I just don't buy it. Now, I am by no means a data expert, but just from a marketer's perspective, I can look through a lot of this and say, I'm not sure I actually believe what's being said. So can you talk about what is actually smoke and mirrors and what's true in regards to spend analytics platform this year in 2024?
So if you have parts or products, you are like office supplies, hardware, nuts, bolts, screws, things with part numbers. If you've got things like that, then AI is probably going to be very good at getting you some pretty detailed classification. Everything else, you'll notice with a lot of the spend analytics tools, you might only get a level 1 or 2 categorization. Now, I've seen uncategorized as a category, which drives me nuts. That's not a category, that's cheating. And the other thing I've seen is when we classify, if we can only get to one level, we leave it travel at one level, because we want to see that, we want to show the customer that you've got a gap in your data. You need to get more detail so that we can classify this further. But if you do travel for 4 levels or 5 levels, how do you know where the gaps are in your data, what you need to improve, like maybe your invoicing process or your PO process? You can't tell because it looks like you have a fully classified data set. And so look for things like that. Look for, vague classification. So travel to level 1 or 2, you should be getting it to 3 or 4. You should know your taxis, your limos, your private helicopters and private jets. You should know those things. You should, if you've got a lot of detail in your invoice lines, you should be expecting the same level of detail in the classification. And from what I've seen and heard, that's not happening right now with AI.
So what do I do? I've already invested money. I've purchased a spend analytics platform, and I'm now the end user. And I'm being told this is all AI generated. It's all automated. It's going to be super fast and accurate.
First thing is, what are your objectives? What are you looking to achieve? And is the data that you're receiving matching those things? If not, you then have to manage your expectations. Or, I know a couple of people who are just kind of waiting the end of their contract out with a couple of spend analytics suppliers, which is like, what a waste of money. They can't get it to work for them. And I bet there's lots of people watching or listening now going, yep, that's us. And I think we need to give people the tools to challenge these suppliers at the sales process part. Ask more questions. Ask, is it going to do this? Is it going to do that? I think there's a lot of assumptions made that it will do this, it will do that, or they've seen it with a specific data set in a demo, and then they get their data in and they're like, oh no, we can't do it with your data. We don't have the right information. And so we need to educate the procurement community on challenge, ask more questions. There's nothing wrong with the tools that are out there as long as you know what you're getting. I think we need to manage those expectations more.
And I would add, I have clients that use some of these tools that are very happy. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah,
but it is.
It depends. It really depends. And I can guarantee that a lot of the time it might not even be the spend analytics provider's fault. It's that they didn't establish what the client actually wanted at the beginning of the process. And then it's only when they get into the process they realize that maybe they wanted something else.
Yeah.
Susan, what are you seeing in 2024 as common types of dirty data, like that are running through these systems? Or, I mean, I feel like with the amount of data that you're looking at on a weekly basis, you've maybe already been able, what are we in the end of May? You've already maybe been able to pick up some trends that I would be really interested to hear.
I don't think that much has changed over the last 7 years. It's that things are misclassified. We have a normalization problem with the supplier names, multiple versions of the same thing, sometimes in different systems. A lot of the time it's lack of time and resources, or it's a low priority for, people who are already overloaded. We're seeing layoffs across the board, and everyone has got even less time now. And it's one of those things that just falls by the wayside. Some people aren't focused on it at all. We spent months on a project, gave them a data set back with amazing insights. Literally, their legal services spend was 40% higher than they thought, and we're talking millions. And my contact left, and the replacement was like, "Oh, I don't really see what we're doing with this. So I don't see the point in it." And it's, so there's a little bit of that. I think it's education and training in terms of how to manage and own your procurement data, because I think if you speak to most procurement people, they learned on the job. There's no handbook. It's just, here you go, figure that out. So that as well.
So of all of the companies that I've worked for, the hundreds or thousands of clients, I don't think I've ever met someone that says, we have good ERP data. We love the data from our ERP, right? I mean, ERP data is crap across the board. And I feel like no matter what level you are in your career and you're listening, you're probably laughing or crying when you're hearing this, because you're in agreement. But I guess my question is, if I am more junior in my career and I'm listening to this and I'm like, I hate my ERP, the data sucks, and we've done layoffs, like, how do I even go to my boss or my leadership and get budget or get some more resource or get them to understand that this needs to be prioritized? I feel like that's a problem with a lot of people that I talk to that are more junior.
Yeah. Track your time. Track how much you're spending building a report that someone asks for, or track your time on how much time you're spending fixing errors before you can even build the report that you're doing, and put associate a cost with those hours. And suddenly it becomes something very tangible that you can go and say, look, I could be doing, we did something for a client and we saved them 10 hours a week just by putting a couple of spreadsheets together. It wasn't even like a massively complex project. 10 hours a week for 2 people. That's huge. Imagine what else they could be doing in that time. And I bet that's going on across the board, but nobody's actually tracking what they're doing or what's happening to know that it's as big a problem as it is. Or what's the consequences when it's not right? This client's unhappy. We lost this client because we didn't do this right, because the data wasn't right. Find real life impact examples as well. And the other thing is talk in business language. So let's not talk about cost savings and time savings or too much. Let's talk about increasing profitability or the bottom line. Let's start talking in their language, get them interested a bit more.
I have to say though that, like, I can't believe we're having this conversation in 2024, and actually you're both so right. It's a disaster. Truly, the ERP is a disaster because of, exactly as you said, Sarah, the data that comes out of it. And Susan, I like your approach on this. But at the same time, I can't believe we're having this conversation in 2024.
I know, but I think and I've talked about this a lot this week, actually. I think the actual problem is we need to train people to put the data in right in the first place. That would solve most of the problems.
See, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that will work. I'm not convinced that. Well, hear me out. I think we have to design more intelligent systems that don't require training, that prompt the user, or that predict what the user needs to input, and then
I like that. Yeah, make it easy for them.
Exactly, because if you make it easy, but people, let's be honest, people are lazy. I'm lazy. I'll own that. So if you just make it easy for me, I'll just do the easiest thing. I joke that we moved to, well, I'll be honest, we moved to SAP a few years ago, and I often joke, and I talked about this publicly, that our SAP finance system is so complicated, I can't use it. And the easiest thing for me to do is have Emily, my EA, input the stuff, or the whatever teams, because I can't do it. And I don't have the time to go deconstruct and decode the SAP system, because like, you can't train me enough to learn that. And so, but if you gave me an easy way to just say, oh, hey, Siri, whatever, blah, 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 I'd do that. I mean, that's faster than writing an email.
Oh, yeah, I take it back. That's the way forward.
So, Dr. Elouise, I'll counter that with, I would argue large enterprise companies who are on systems like Oracle and SAP are not going to be ripping them out anytime soon.
I agree. 100%.
And I think they're too behind the times to develop software or functionality that's going to be able to do that. So my question is, for those types of companies where it's not going to be that easy and intuitive anytime soon, what do we do?
Yeah, well, I think Susan gave a great answer. The reason I paused.
How long have we got?
Yeah. Well, I'll let Susan answer that question. But what I will say is, what do we do today is different than where I go on that question, because you have to be careful. And so this is what I've been talking about all week, is that someday, and it could be sooner than we imagine, somebody's going to come along with an ERP killer or a company killer. So you take a company like Google. All of a sudden, the OpenAI comes out of nowhere and is a complete existential threat to Google. And we've seen this before. You have this entire industry of taxis that basically own the ground transportation, and then out of nowhere, Lyft and Uber obliterate the taxi industry. And now, 10 years later, we have robo taxis that are poised to obliterate not only gig economy ride sharing, but last mile delivery. And that was only been 10 years that Lyft and Uber have been around. So where I go to that question, Sarah, because you're right, nobody's ripping out an ERP system, but also there are existential threats out there. And so you can't just throw up your hands and say, well, we bought SAP, too bad, because eventually, you could be in bigger trouble than you realize.
To Dr. Elouise's point around making systems so easy to use that we don't have a data problem, I would argue, what are we going to do right now when those systems are not available and or large enterprises are not going to be ripping out Oracle or SAP anytime soon?
If it was me and my massive organization, the first thing I would do is document. So I can't tell you the number of times I've started a job with no handover notes. And every time I've left that job, I've had full page documents with screenshots and everything. For the key roles, to get it right, have something in place that someone can just come in and read. You don't even need to spend time training them. They can read a document, but they know what to do with screenshots and how-tos. That will help minimize a lot of initial errors. And also prioritize. So if you look at it as one big massive thing to solve, it feels unachievable. Focus on priority areas of the business that you need to start with, and deal with it in smaller chunks and try that.
So Susan, I hosted a panel last year. It was a data panel. And I think it was you and a couple of the other panelists also aligned around having someone designated as the master keeper of the data internally. And
I would say a team rather than a person, though, because you don't want to have all that knowledge in one place. If something happens to that person, if they leave, you need to spread the knowledge, but a group of master owners, definitely, I would say, is the best way.
and having that person then, or to your point, a team that's part of their job, and they are making sure that people are trained and the data is being put in correctly, that the suppliers are being communicated with correctly. Because if it's the Wild West and it's a free-for-all and it's not tied to someone's responsibilities, I find it's going to be nearly impossible to actually work.
The other thing I'd add is it has to be procurement master data and not business master data, because I know for a fact that when procurement tried to talk to the organization's master data team, they just don't understand procurement. And so, like, they don't know how to classify data. I can tell you, I have recruited so many people over the years for spend data classification, and none of them have come from an IT background or a data background. They've come from a broad kind of business range of experience. So you have to have people with knowledge as well, like subject matter experts as well.
That would be an interesting podcast, Dr. Elouise, sometime, talking about the talent piece.
Oh,
and
yes.
it would be really interesting, Susan, to have you come on again and talk about specific. I think the data piece is really important, and often maybe not as big of part of the job descriptions in the interview process as it should be. And I think people need to be very aware about what to look for in conjunction with somebody that has the talent ability to leverage AI as part of that process.
Yeah.
So, Susan, one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about is what the heck it's like being a woman in data. So I started my career on the indirect side in marketing procurement, and the software that I was selling was very heavy on the print and packaging side. And I started going to industry conferences, and I still remember the very first conference I went to was a print-focused conference. And I walked in and scoped around, and there were 5 women at the entire conference, including myself.
Yeah.
I was a little bit shocked and dumbfounded. I grew up in a very female focused family. I was the oldest of 4 girls. I have 12 female cousins. I just was like, wow. And so I'm just curious, you are in what I would consider still a pretty male dominated industry. Just having you sharing your thoughts and perspectives on what that's like.
So first of all, I love it because I can stand out. I can be memorable and different. But I've also been patronized, spoken down to, been told how to run my business so many times. And if I'd listened to any of them, I wouldn't still be here now. You do have to have a thick skin, and really be firm in your beliefs and your plans. But, you know, my first job out of university was a paint merchandiser. So I used to go around DIY stores merchandising paint. So I was dealing with old tradesmen, you know, trying to teach them stuff about paint. And they're like, love, all right, love, I was a trades painter for 30 years. I know what paint does, you know. So I guess it can be challenging. It's definitely, being a business owner as well, it definitely is more difficult to just get funding and stuff like that. I do think that there is a bias towards men, even just getting loans and stuff. It's hard. But you have to make the most of the opportunities that are in front of you. So, you know, and I do remember, like, I was in sales in my 20s, you know, and I did try and fit in with the guys, you know. But I did realize eventually that by standing out and being unique, you're more memorable, and people like that.
You mean that just the pink sparkly?
Yeah, you know, I even remember, so, you know, in my 20s, which was 20 years ago, which is terrifying, you know, it was still corporate suits and skirts and trousers. So what did I do? I wore the most fabulous, outrageous shoes, you know, to get a little bit of my personality through. You know, I had pink stripes and red stripes in my hair, you know. I still did little bits. But I think the hardest thing is also I look younger, and I have always looked younger than I am. So people always assume that I don't know anything. And maybe that is just a woman thing too, but people will just give you unsolicited advice everywhere. But actually some of it is actually quite helpful, and some of it genuinely comes from a good place, but it does come across as like either like a fatherly kind of figure or a, you know, I know better than you, love.
Can I ask you a question? Like, I want to ask you, like, so, and this is true for me. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like now, I feel like I have to know my stuff when I walk in the door, because I feel like, and this is not necessarily true, this is just how I feel. I feel like people are gunning for me,
Yes.
and so I'm going to, I'm not only going to be able, here's what I want to present. I'm buttoned up on that. I'm going to extrapolate the tier 1 and tier 2 questions you might ask me. And then I'm going to prepare like a tier 3 random stuff that you could. So when I walk into a meeting, I am so I can predict where the questions are going to go, and I've got stock answers or good answers. I do so much preparation that
Yeah.
because I feel like and again, this gets back to that feeling as an imposter, but I feel like I'm going to walk in and get exposed.
You really hit the nail on the head there, and without even realizing, I do that too. And even things like, you know, I do a post on a taxonomy and then I get challenged on it. And I'm like, yes, but I'm speaking about a specific taxonomy in a specific area. This is what I know. I do get challenged. And actually, something that I decided was like, I don't do sponsored posts.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons is I don't want to endorse something that I don't understand, because then people will start asking me questions on it. I lose credibility, and people will just wipe you out straight away, way more than if a man did that, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And also, when I decided to put myself out there publicly, when I started to get a bit of attention on LinkedIn, I knew at that point that I had to be like, they were completely honest. So, you know, yes, I get drunk and break awards at ceremonies, and I tell people about it, because if you hide that stuff, people will come for you.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as a woman. So I'm like, you know what? Here I am, deal with it. And it really, honestly, I don't get trolled. And people would know better, because they would get trolled back twice as hard. And I think you do have to, you know, be tough, and not take any nonsense, because if you let them do it once, then they'll just walk all over you.
I think, Susan, it's easier to do that being a business owner versus working in a large corporate environment where things can be very controlled publicly, and you're not able to necessarily say some of the things or share some of the viewpoints that you would like.
I could have so much to lose by saying some of the stuff I say, though. That could completely wipe out my whole customer base. I could put myself out of business. I don't know how I haven't managed to do that, but you know, it's a risk. But something that, like, you know, I can't pretend to be somebody I'm not. I'm not Miss Corporate UK.
Well, it's also
or
a fine
America.
line, right? Because if
Yeah.
I just go spew this nonsense that I know is not true, that like source to pay is the answer, then I'm going to lose credibility. Now, you don't have to agree with my spider chart or whatever else, and we're going to get more into that in future episodes. But but that's fine. But I have to, and this is what I love about you, Susan, is you're authentic, and I have to be authentic to saying, like, what I'm talking about may take a decade or it may never come along, but I am not going to go spewing something I don't know, something I know for a fact that doesn't work, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Yeah, that's what I love about you.
All right, well, that's it for today. Tune in next Wednesday for another episode.